Hello, Cadre. This is another video. I don't have any PowerPoint to go with this. I could have made one, but I thought this is pretty simple and straightforward, and I think uh, you can create your own a version of a visible slide or visible model to go with this. What I want to talk about is how do school systems or school buildings or programs break the inertia of what they've always done or this business as usual kind of thing. And it's not easy to do. We talked in a couple of other presentations about Maslow's hierarchy and all the implications of that and how people fear loss during the change process. And so it's not an easy thing to do. But here's a couple of things that have worked and worked well for me in trying to get people to be comfortable with finding new boxes to think inside of, getting beyond thinking outside the box and simply how can we do things in wholly different ways that benefit children, benefit the quality of the teaching in the classroom, and those kind of things. Here's one of them. Traditionally, we would say the best way to launch something is ready, fire, and aim. So in the getting ready process, we usually do a needs assessment, which tends to not be a needs assessment because needs assessments are the gap between where you are and where you want to be. And most of the time when we do needs assessments, they really are wants assessments, which are not unlike the things that when our family does Christmas lists, we're supposed to put things on there that we need. And I put things like golf clubs and fishing rods and stuff like that. And what I get is underwear because that's what I need. You get the point. So when we ready, aim, fire, we spend a lot of time getting ready, aiming the thing that we're trying to do, when in fact, when we understand the mandate and diffusion models of change, you got to get it started. In other words, it really should be ready, fire, aim. In other words, aim the thing once it gets launched, because until there actually is a launch, there is nothing to aim anyway. And trying to it doesn't completely dispel the notion that it's kind of like flying or redesigning an airplane while it's in flight. But let's take the example of that first rocket to the moon. It was off course 95% of the time. But because of onboard systems that would tell the people in Houston where that rocket was, when that thing finally landed on the moon, it landed exactly where they had wanted it to land. Had they tried to aim that from the ground, it never would have happened because of all the things they needed to steer around, the effects of gravity, the effects of all the kind of things that they deal with in space travel, which I'm not sure I fully understand, but anyway, it was off course 95% of the time and yet landed exactly where it was because they had the ability to aim it as it was flying. And so let's get it back to things like implementing a PBIS or BIS program or PLC. You got to get it going in order to know what it's all about so that you know what needs to be adapted to the context, culture, and capacity where it's being done. And otherwise, you can't know. It's like dry labbing a chemistry experiment. You got to do the chemistry experiment. You got to see the chemicals mixing with each other. You got to see the reaction in order to know what's going on. You just can't read about it and write about it in your lab book. So that's one of the things. Ready, aim, ready, fire, aim. I think is a far better strategy than ready, aim, fire because the rockets tend to never get off the launching pad. The second one, and this worked really well, and I use a personal example that when we were in North Platte, that school district, all of the elementary schools, the two middle schools, and the high school had basically had a way of doing things that hadn't changed for a long, long time because the previous superintendent had been there well over 20 years. All the principals had been in their roles for a long, long time. I think the newest of the principals had been in her job maybe 5 years at the most, but most of them were 20 plus year veterans of the system. And it wasn't that they were doing a bad job. I just wanted them to begin to think about doing some things new. So we started this thing, and it was kind of corny at first to some of them, but once it caught on, it became real source of energy for change. And so we said to each school building, you have to have something in the showcase. In other words, what is it that you're doing or could be doing that could be a showcase kind of activity where others, particularly within the district, could come and see what it is you're doing, whether it's in reading or a writing program or art or physical education, whatever it might happen to be. What could you put in your showcase window that you would be willing to have others come and see? The second thing is that you should have something that's in the sandbox. In other words, something you're thinking about. So when you're meeting with your faculty, what could become next? What's the next thing you're kind of planning to move up into a showcase kind of project or activity? And what is it that you're thinking about, and how are you thinking about that? And then the third is that you need to have something that's on the drawing board. In other words, something you're just kind of, what if? A whole bunch of ideas, many of which you may or may not even try, may or may not even want to bring onto the sandbox level or the showcase level. But what are some things that you're thinking about when you think about, could we teach reading better? Could we run our schedule better? Could we organize our students in better kinds of ways? What if we had teachers doing different kinds of things in terms of outside of class activities with students? Just what if kind of thing. Those two things did a lot in that school district to kind of break that momentum that was an inertia, trying to get the ball to move in a different direction or to move faster or to at least move in some cases. It was really hard to do because when you try to tell people that you want them to do things differently, it communicates a message that you don't like what they're doing now. And that doesn't set well, especially if you're new in the district or new in the building and kind of thing. So I think those two strategies of Ready, Fire, Aim and Showcase, Sandbox, and Drawing Board were good strategies to use to let them take charge of the change process and see what it is that they wanted to do. I hope that's helpful.